You know, it's always funny to think that movies that were made in the 90s had no idea how 90s they were. What's going on, guys? Welcome to 31 Days of Horror. I am Morgan Film Fan. Let's jump into some scares. This is Stigmata. This was released in 1999, from my recollection. And it stars Patricia Arquette, Gabriel Byrne, and Jonathan Pryce. And basically, it is about what the title implies, stigmata. I'm sure everybody knows what stigmata is, but for those who don't, it's when you get spontaneous wounds on your wrists, representing the wounds that Christ had on the cross. So, what is there to say about Stigmata? Honestly, wasn't the biggest fan of this one. Straight off the bat, did not enjoy it so much. I wish I did. Scream Factory put out the Blu-ray, and I was looking forward to getting the Blu-ray for a while. I had my eye on it, but it went out of print, and kind of glad I didn't get it now, but I stuck to the DVD because I'd never seen the film before, and it sounded interesting, but I don't know, this is one of those 90s films that it just takes itself way too seriously, and it tries way too hard. I think the biggest problem with this film is it tries way too hard, and by the end of the film, it's actually based on something in reality, like something that actually happened. But you have a lot of 90s tropes going on, and then all of a sudden, this film starts to think it's The Crow. The Crow with Brandon Lee. And then it continues being 90s, it continues being like, you know, grunge music everywhere, rainy atmospheres, weird color palettes like greens and blues, and then once again it thinks it's The Crow. So it just keeps going back and forth like that. I'm like, every once in a while I'm like, oh my gosh, how much inspiration from The Crow did the director possibly take from this film? At least it felt that way. Like, I'm not saying this film, like, plot wise or theme wise is Crowish, but visually, yeah, absolutely 100%. I'm pretty sure the director really liked the movie The Crow. So anyway, what this is about is a woman named Frankie, played by Patricia Arquette, and she is a hairdresser, and she is an atheist, and all of a sudden she starts to experience these wounds on her wrists. The doctors think they're self-inflicted, of course, and they're trying to diagnose her, and what they're leaning into is epilepsy. So she starts to also have like hallucinations, and she starts to have delusions, and parts of her day where she doesn't like remember whatsoever. And you know, epilepsy, it goes a little bit more complex sometimes than just simply seizures. So that's what they're figuring that this woman has. And then there's this priest named Andrew Kiernan. And Andrew Kiernan is a priest, but he's also a heavy believer in science. And he really likes to disprove miracles that go on in the world. And he recently found this bleeding statue of Mary in South America. He also found in Brazil, they were talking about this figure that appeared on a wall, which he debunked to be being like mildew from rain that made a stain on the wall, basically. So he debunked it that way. But there's this priest named Father Almeida who dies at the beginning of the film. And this is when the statue of Mary starts crying blood. Human blood, by the way. And as the film goes on, it's said that this priest was trying to translate this scripture that was found, and this is actually what's based on real life, is this scripture that apparently in real life was found in 1945, and is the like closest and newest written scripture by Jesus and in Jesus's times. So the Vatican doesn't recognize this scripture and calls it heresy, but this priest, Father Almeida, was trying to translate the scripture basically all his life. And after his death, he apparently starts to sort of possess the main character, Frankie. Why he picks Frankie, I have absolutely no idea. Especially her being an atheist and her just being a completely random person. Like, she has no connection to anything. Throughout the film, she starts to sense that she starts to sense Andrew Kiernan, the priest, that she starts looking for him. She's on a subway at one point, and she goes up to this random priest, and she says, "Are you Andrew Kiernan?" And he's like, "No, I'm Father Durning, I think his name is." And then she starts having one of her like episodes on the subway, and she has these visions of her wrists being nailed and her feet being nailed and all that. And she constantly has these visions and delusions throughout the film. She has one in a nightclub at one point, where afterwards she runs off into an alley and she smashes a bottle, so it's like half a spiked bottle, and she starts to threaten Andrew at that point in another language, which she starts to write in this other language also, and this language is like really ancient and from biblical times. It hasn't been spoken in like since BC days. I wrote it down. What is it? Aramaic. Yeah. So yeah, throughout the film, she's possessed. She has episodes of possession, I should say, and it turns out it's Father Almeida. His spirit hasn't left this world in wanting to translate this scripture, because he's so heavily focused on this last piece of biblical scripture, and wanting to prove it as, you know, proof of God and fact of God kind of thing. And I think there would have been a cool film in this, but I think it just, like I said, it tries way too hard. It tries really hard on being offensive too, I find. And it's offensive for kind of no reason. There's a song at the beginning. The film opens up with a song called Mary Mary by Chumbawamba, and it actually uses the Hail Mary prayer in it along with like grunge rock. It's just really weird. And there's just, I don't know, there's scenes that it's just a try hard movie. It didn't work for me. It didn't sit well with me. It wasn't an enjoyable film for me. I didn't have a good time with it at all. So it's kind of well done. I mean, it's soaked in 90s tropes. It's filled with grunge and grunge music and like a grunge score. And everybody is dressed in 90s attire and all that, and it's very like punkish, gothic kind of atmospheres and feels and kind of thing. And Patricia Arquette does a really good job in her performance for sure. So does the priest, Andrew Kiernan. But overall, it was just underwhelming for me, and I don't think this one has much rewatch value for me anyway. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that it's not going to have its audience, but I don't think I'm just that audience. Pretty much, it didn't hit me as hard as I think the director wanted it to hit the audience that he was going for. Now, of course, there are some good moments in the film. All her episodes are very spooky and kind of well done. There's also a conversation that, by the way, she's always hitting on this priest. I swear she wants to fuck this priest so bad, it's not even funny. Like, constantly, the more she gets to know him, the harder she tries. It's ridiculous. Anyway, though, there's this conversation between him and her where he's talking about how he made his vows and he can't have sex because he's celibate as a priest. and he states a good saying. He's like, I just traded one set of complications for another set of complications, which is kind of true, you know, because it's kind of you got to pick your battle, right? You either get there's pros and cons to everything in life, and it's the same with, you know, being a priest or not being a priest. There's pros and cons to both, kind of thing, if you really think about it. But yeah, it's not a movie for me, but it's not a movie that I'm gonna say, you know, is completely awful either, because it's decently filmed and everything. So just not for me. That's my final conclusion. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice, or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more soon, so stay tuned and check out what's on the channel right now. And until next review, have a good one, take care, and cheers.